Hey, what is up, everyone? Welcome to the Crack House Chronicles. I am Donnie, your host, and with me is a man that asked the age-old question, when did covering a gas pump handle with a plastic bag become the international sign of, we're out of gas? It's Dale.
Definitely. It's big time this year, wasn't it?
Oh, man, we've been out of gas everywhere.
Them damn yellow bags.
Oh, yeah, they just put a bag over a handle and said, it makes you...
You should know what that means.
Yeah. Yeah, if you know, you know.
If you know, you know. I just thought maybe it was out of them little gloves, you know, for diesel pumps.
That's so crazy, man.
Oh, Lordy.
What's going on with you, dude?
Oh, same old, same old. Working
Same
a little
old.
bit, getting ready to do a podcast. What about yourself?
Yeah, same thing, getting ready to record a podcast.
That's right. Good stuff, man.
Oh, yeah, we got some good stuff today.
I'll tell you what, man, we've been having some good numbers, and we really appreciate each and every one of you
I'll
guys.
tell you, the numbers are just off the charts, guys.
Love it, love it, love it.
Yep.
And all you guys.
Yep, we love all of our listeners.
Speaking of, I got a little shout out for
A
friend
shout
of ours.
out.
Yeah,
It's not Bizarre Nate, is it?
No, but I miss Bizarre Nate. You know, he moved on from his job. He moved to another job. So I don't see him often. To give a little shout out, Bizarre Nate, for just for being you.
I just like saying Bizarre Nate.
Yeah, he's got to get the record here. So I think he's proud of that. So anyway, we give a shout out to Bisco Guy, Biscoguy. Bisco Guy 427 gave us a big 5-star review, and man, we really appreciate that. It just keeps on helping us out any which way you can do it, and thanks so much.
Thank you, Bisco Guy.
So what we got going on today, man?
Dale.
Something special? Tell me.
Something special.
Awesome.
We have an exclusive interview with Kathy Gilchrist.
Kathy Gilchrist.
Now, if anybody don't know who Kathy Gilchrist is, she is the biological daughter of William Bradford Bishop.
Wow.
Who we covered in our last episode.
Yep, last week.
And she just, within the last couple weeks, it was confirmed by the FBI that she was his biological, or she is his biological daughter.
Yes.
Yep.
And she lives right here in North Carolina?
Yeah.
Which is another little tidbit there. It's kind of cool.
She lives down at Carolina Shores, down on the coast.
Wow. Kind of cool stuff.
So we are pleased to have Kathy on the show today. Welcome to the show, Kathy.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me.
Well, thank you.
It's pretty neat stuff.
Absolutely. We're just curious, and just right from the get-go, tell us a little bit of background about you.
Okay. Well, I'm not any different than the person that I described in the book that I wrote.
Yeah.
I was born in 1957 I was actually born in Massachusetts, and I seemed to know during my whole life that I was an adopted child. I was adopted by a wonderful, wonderful, hardworking, caring family. They were unable to have children of their own. My father was a Navy veteran, and
Well, we thank him for his service.
Yes. Well, he was in World War II and served in Korea.
Okay, cool.
But in any case, they wanted to have a family, and so they adopted my brother John, and then later they filled out their family. In those days, it was pretty easy to adopt children.
Yeah.
And they raised me in the town they grew up in. It was a very, very typical wholesome environment, and because they knew so many people in town, and because my last name was Sidebottom, it seemed like I knew everybody, or everybody knew me. So there was never any stigma in my mind about being an adopted child. I think I was just always introduced as, we adopted our children, and this is John and this is Kathy, and that's that. So,
so they were pretty upfront from the get-go.
Oh, from the get-go,
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, back in those days, the adoption agencies used to give each family a book. And the name of the book was The Chosen Baby.
Aww.
And it was designed because adoption was fairly prevalent back then.
Mm-hmm.
The whole point was to make sure that children, that their self-esteem was in check, and unfortunately, it kind of backfired on me because I grew up thinking I was way more special than anybody else because I was chosen.
Yeah.
I was
Hey,
kind
makes
of a-
sense.
Yeah, I was kind of a bossy, precocious child, and I was very dramatic. And that was a huge difference in my family because everybody was very humble and modest and quiet and unassuming. And here I was just convinced I was going to replace Shirley Temple at some point. um, so life went on like that. My parents got used to my dramatic ways. And I went on to participate in all things theatrical through high school, and I majored in theater in college. I actually, was fortunate enough to get a good scholarship at Boston University.
Wow.
At the School for the Arts. Yeah, I actually, Gina Davis, if you know who she is.
Oh, we do, yeah.
She was my roommate.
Wow.
Yeah, we both trained in theater at Boston University, so things were just moving along. By that time, my parents, they had accepted the fact that this was going to be my future, and they were very supportive, as was, everybody else in my extended family. I was the youngest granddaughter of 16 grandchildren, so I felt like I was pretty indulged. And the last of the side bottom kids to come along. So in any case, this is pretty interesting because this is the first reference to Brad Bishop. If you know about Bishop, those murders were committed on the first weekend in March of 1976.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Yeah, well, as coincidence would have it, I was doing probably the most wholesome thing a girl could do on the first weekend in March of 1976, and I was being crowned Miss Stoughton 1976.
That is so crazy.
I know. So and the funny thing was I was kind of talked into it because I was a budding feminist of the 70s, and I was living my bohemian life in Boston, but there was scholarship money available, and the Chamber of Commerce wanted to have this pageant because it was the sesquicentennial of the town of Stoughton, Massachusetts. It was the 250th anniversary. So I just think that's so ironic that my birth father was doing the most heinous thing a person could be doing, and I was dressed in red, white, and blue polyester.
Yeah.
Doing something really wholesome.
Yeah, just something completely opposite.
Way opposite spectrum.
Completely opposite. But in any case, my life continued. I got married, have children. I did a lot of performing, and I when my kids were born, I became a teacher, taught drama, we moved to Georgia in 1993, relocated to Georgia, and then eventually up here to North Carolina. I live in Carolina Shores, and it was during the time that right after I retired that I said to myself, well, I wonder what I'm going to do now. I know I'm going to move. I know I'm going to retire, but what's my next new adventure? And so I those DNA tests had become popular, and
Yeah.
I thought, well, I knew a little bit about my birth mother because my parents had been so wonderful that they even they sat my brother and I down at when they were probably about the same age I am now, but when they were when they were older, but they were healthy, and they just went over all their documents with us and, filled us in on what their plans were in case anything should happen to them. And they handed me my adoption papers.
Wow.
And my mom said to me, we always thought it was weird that you never asked about who your parents were, because your adoption is not sealed. And in Massachusetts, a law had passed that allowed adoptees to start seeking. They were could see their birth certificates, as a matter of fact.
So what name was on your birth certificate?
Well, I didn't get my birth certificate for years later, but my adoption papers, well, what I did was I contacted the adoption agency and I said, what's available to me? And they said, well, the first thing that we can send you is what we call non-identifying information. And that is all the information your birth mother gave to us when she surrendered you for adoption, or before, she surrendered you, when she made the plan. And so I had lots of information actually about her. I knew her name was Carol. I knew kind of what she looked like. I knew about my grandparents, who they were. I was originally from Massachusetts. And it was a man mentioned throughout this document named Donald. And she talked a lot about this man, Donald, that he was tall and he was blonde and he had 2 boys. But he was separated from his wife, and so I just accepted all of that as true. It also said that I had an older sister whose name was Betsy, and she had been adopted. I mean, she had been left with her grandparents, and while I was being born, and that there was a younger sister as well, who was placed for adoption 2 years later. So, I took that. I was probably in my 40s at that time, and I took that information and it satisfied some curiosity. But I was always looking over my shoulder for these sisters,
Somebody out there that looked like you in a way, I guess.
Exactly. And people were forever saying that to me because I have kind of one of those generic faces. So, in any case, thinking that was all true, when I took the DNA test, I did check the little box. This is 20 years later. I'm 60, and I'm checking the little box that said I was an adopted child, and yes, I would like to be made aware of any siblings. And so immediately the first cousin who popped up is my friend Susan, my cousin. She's my third cousin, Susan. And come to find out, her avocation in life, her passion is genealogy. So we connected right away. She was very excited because I was part of her family tree. And the next family member who popped up was a sister. It said cousin, but Susan had determined that that I didn't have any. Both of my birth parents, were only children, so I had no aunts and uncles. I had no cousins. So I knew that this person had to be a half sister.
Right.
And when I reached out to her, she was shocked because she said, I know my sisters. No, there's none of us were adopted. Come to find out, my birth mother had 3 children that she placed for adoption, never told anyone else from her family. So I subsequently, I eventually, it took about 6 months. I mean, that half sister of mine was traumatized.
I bet.
Because she found a story about her mother. And of course, now that DNA tests are so widely used, that's not unusual. People are finding all kinds of stuff, that they never would have thought was true. There's no secrets anymore. But, that was traumatizing for her.
I bet.
And it made me feel kind of, obviously bad because I brought this upon them. But eventually, that was a nice story. Eventually, we all, when they came around with the information and they said, yeah, I guess it's true because science doesn't lie. In the meantime, we discovered via those DNA tests, we discovered an older brother who had been placed for adoption before me. And we still haven't found the other younger sister, but and we did have a little reunion. But the big question was, what was Mom doing with William Bradford Bishop? And it took, to be honest with you, the person she described at great length in the testimony that she supplied to the adoption agent was not my birth father.
No.
Now maybe she hoped he was my birth father. I don't know, but
Or
that
maybe
wasn't him.
she just thought he was the birth father. Maybe.
Right.
Well, we think maybe it was an old boyfriend of hers, and maybe she had hoped. I don't know, but it really threw a wrench in trying to find who my father was.
I bet.
Because not only did she give all this information, and that kind of set my cousin Susan, who was searching for my father, set her on a wild goose chase. But when I finally got my birth certificate, another name was on there.
Oh,
Not
wow.
even, not Bishop, not the man she described, somebody else. So that's a bizarre story. That was a very, very bizarre story alone before I even knew that Bishop was my father.
So tell us about when your cousin Susie came to you and she found out that Bradford Bishop was your biological father.
We had become pretty close, and as I say, she lived in Maine and I lived in Georgia, but we talked. I had actually even gone up to Maine to meet with her at one point, because I visit New England now and then. I have family there, and anyway, she finally called me and she said, "Are you sitting down? Are you sitting down?" And I said, well, I'm in my car. And she says, no, I think you better go home. Or I think I better call you back when you're home. And I said, now, Susan.
You can't do that.
Sitting on the couch somewhere.
Yeah, I said, that's not, now I know you're onto something. And, I'm on my way to meet with some friends. So you got to tell me whatever it is you want to tell me. So she says, okay, I finally found your father. And I said, oh, cool. And in my typical crazy way, I just said, is he somebody famous? And she kind of laughed. She said, well, yeah. She says, I'll let you Google him yourself.
Oh, wow.
And she gave me that name, William Bradford Bishop.
Have you ever heard of William Bradford Bishop before?
I was 19 years old when the murders occurred, and I think that I probably heard something about it on the news because I kind of vaguely remember. But no, as a matter of fact, I was a English and drama teacher. So when I thought William Bradford, I thought about Plymouth Plantation, and I said, in Massachusetts, I said, oh, I'm a Mayflower descendant. And she said, well, yeah, but that's not the big deal. And so I put in his name, and up popped his FBI wanted poster.
Oh, my goodness.
And I looked at that face, and I said, oh, he has my face. Oh, my gosh, that's really him. And wow, it was crazy. It was crazy. Due to my very dramatic nature, Of course, I reacted. I just said, oh my gosh, of course. So many bizarre things happen to me. Of course, of course, he is my father. And I was meeting. We laugh because Susan actually helped edit the book that I wrote too. She's also a good editor,
Hmm.
and she says her favorite line is, "I had the best." I was meeting my friends for lunch, and I knew I was going to have the best story at the lunch table
Well, of course.
I bet.
because my father was a murderer.
Walk in and say, y'all not going to believe this.
No, you really aren't going to get. Yeah, as a matter of fact, when I said, "Guess what, guys?" and they go, "Well, you've had so many crazy things happen in your life lately, so we can only imagine." I said, "I found my birth father." And actually, one of my friends says to me, "So help me, Kathy, if you try to tell me it's Donald Trump, I'm not going to." I said, no. I said, "It's even better than that." So, yeah, we followed that story. I did. I did a lot of research. I had no idea that he was, such a cult figure.
Hmm.
As I say, a frequent flyer on all of those investigative shows. So, then the pandemic, and I kept talking to people about it. I said, "You want to hear a weird story?" And there were so many people who, like, they'd either not believe me, they'd say no. I said, "Okay, then look at the picture." And when you look at the picture, I have exactly the same mouth. I have a mole on my face in exactly the same place that he does.
Wow.
And when I really dug into some of his personality characteristics, I have no homicidal tendencies. I taught public school for years and I never killed anybody. So,
Well,
and
that
I
proves
raised
that.
teenagers. I taught teenagers.
Right.
So, um, if I got through that, then I'm really never going to kill anybody. But we do share a whole lot of similarities. I mean, almost weird, creepy similarities. That,
Wow.
yeah, it's obvious he's my father. And so people kept saying, "You, gosh, you need to write a book about this." And then the pandemic hit, and I was retired, and I had been an English teacher, and I said, I could write a book about this.
Now's the time to do it, right?
So I did, and it was published, and then what happened was a local newscaster here in Wilmington, North Carolina, because where I live is halfway between Wilmington and Myrtle Beach.
Hmm.
Um, she came down and did an interview. I mean, it was even an outside interview on a chilly March day, um, and about Bishop. She was a true crime junkie, and she was like, "Wow, this is just such a bizarre story." And then her story went on the news, and it just went viral. And I can't believe the phone calls that I mean the New York Times interviewed me. I
Crazy.
did talk shows in Australia. I mean, it was crazy because people are so into this. But um, there's been a lot of things. Actually, I don't know if you saw there was a recent story aired in Washington D.C. area. Um, a reporter from NBC Universal actually came down here to Carolina Shores and did the interview because um, well, I kept calling the FBI because I'm a good citizen and you're supposed to report things like that,
Hmm.
And I actually even called, I don't know how much you know about all the background, but I called Detective Popkin at the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department. He is still there, and he was the investigator at the time of the murders. Um, and I asked many times, um, is there any way that you can compare my DNA with DNA from the crime scene. And actually, I was told by pretty much everybody, no, there's legal ramifications. We can't do that.
Mm.
And I thought, well, I don't know. That seems like that might not be so difficult. So it was just kind of frustrating me because I thought, if I was born and I was born in between his junior and senior year at Yale,
Okay.
and I figured that out before it was confirmed because I just did the math. And I read in some research that he left Yale in May of 1957,
Mm-hmm.
and that what he told them was he had to go home. There was a family emergency, and he was needed at home, and that he didn't have the money to continue, and he went home for a year, and then he came back the next year. Well, I was born in June of 1957. So it kind of made sense to me that he would leave town, that he would leave Connecticut and go back to Pasadena to escape paternity if he knew there was a child.
Yeah.
So, and when everything started coming out, I actually I heard from a cousin of mine. I know I have cousins now. Her name is Judy, and her mother was Brad's first cousin. So she called me out of the blue. She lives in Montana, and she said, "You're our cousin. There's a bunch of us here. We've been living under this dark shadow of what Brad did, and we're just thrilled that you're here." Because, maybe not, because you really are our cousin, and maybe this will be a bright light. But they confirmed the fact that there was no reason for him to have to go home.
Yeah.
So that, I guess, was a well-kept secret.
Yeah.
But then the FBI came to my house just one day. I was actually out getting a COVID vaccine. I had to drive quite a ways to get one, and they came. My husband was home, and they knocked. These two gentlemen knocked on the door, and they said, "Is Kathy Gilchrist home?" And my husband just kind of, I'm sure, when he told me, he was rolling his eyes. He says, "Oh, this is about her and her crazy father and her crazy book." And so he said, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, we need some questions." He goes, "I know, probably about William Bradford Bishop." And they said, "Yeah." She says, "Well, she's not home." And so they started to ask him questions. He says, "No, you need to talk to her, or you need to talk to her cousin Susan. They know the whole story." And eventually I did go into I went to the FBI office in Wilmington. I brought, I have a daughter who lives in Wilmington, and I brought her with me. She says, whose mother calls them up and says, "Will you go to the FBI with me?" But my husband didn't want to go, so she went with me. I said, "Make sure I just don't talk too much or something." And that officer, that FBI agent said, "Would you consider giving us a sample of some cheek cells? We'd like to send them off to Quantico and see if they match." And I just looked at him, and I didn't say, "I've been asking for this for 3 years."
Yeah,
but
really.
I said, "I'd be more than happy to." So they were wonderful. The local guys were wonderful. They gave me phone numbers. They said, "Listen, this is a dangerous guy. If anything out of the ordinary, or if anybody makes you uncomfortable, call us immediately." But I don't think he's going to appear by any means, because he would have no reason to, other than wanting to see this child of his.
Right.
But in any case, they did send it off to Quantico, and an agent in Washington, D.C. called me and told me that they were quite surprised, but we were a match.
That's
so
crazy.
What they're thinking now, I do get some unusual phone calls from people claiming to know my father. One was really, this man started calling me on Mother's Day, and he called six, and I don't answer my phone if I don't know who it is, because someone's trying to sell me a car warranty or something. So,
yeah, we get those too.
You know how that works.
Yeah.
But he called me 6 times, and he kept saying, I have information about your father, and I really want to share it with you. I think you really want to hear this. And I just forwarded those messages to the FBI because I just, didn't know quite what to do with it, and I wasn't going to engage with somebody, if I didn't know what was going on. So they eventually said the best thing to do if you are okay with engaging with him is try to tape record the phone call, and then we can go from there and try to check it out. And this man was calling from Wisconsin, and he said that he swore that Bishop lived out in the woods of Wisconsin.
Oh, man.
And that he had pictures, and he sent pictures, and he swore it was him. And he wanted me to send some of my DNA so he could get it compared with DNA from from Brad's cigarette butts and Coke cans and things like that. But I really didn't want to take it that far. I just wanted to have him checked out. But he had a lot of personal information about my father, which granted there's a lot there, but that's the closest, in my gut, I feel like he's still alive. I have a feeling he might be living in Europe.
Yeah.
Because that would be really easy for him to live in Europe.
He was pretty fond of Europe, I think.
Yeah, especially Italy.
He really liked Europe a lot, and he spoke 5 languages, and he was used to finding his way around, and he has that diabolical mind.
Yeah, very brilliant.
So, and there was another man who called me from Nevada, and he said, I'm an EMT, and I swear about a year ago I treated William Bradford Bishop. He said I took pictures of his chart, I sent them to the FBI, and nobody's ever talked to me about it. So I don't know. The original FBI agent who contacted me, he was really excited. He said, you could be a lead in finding him, especially if he had any other children.
Yeah, that's what me and Dale were talking about earlier. We was going to ask you if you knew that.
If he had any other children.
I mean, I don't see why he wouldn't. If he was, he was known to be a womanizer, to begin with.
Right.
So it wouldn't surprise me to find out that there are other children somewhere, maybe not even in this country.
Yeah.
But, so it's a pretty bizarre, story.
Kathy, why do you think that he came to North Carolina to dispose of the bodies? Why? Do you have any theory on that?
That is the weirdest thing, and I don't know. I was slated to go up there and meet with that family because they called me, and the daughter of the poor forest ranger who found those bodies.
Yeah.
She called me, and she said, "Wow, maybe we can finally get some kind of closure on this." She says, my father was traumatized for his entire life. And she says, I was just a baby. But she said, I grew up knowing how much this haunted him. And she says, we have stuff we want to show you. And we want to take you to the place
Wow.
Wow.
To the hole, to show you that it was such a remote. She said there is no way anyone would know where this spot is without being told.
Mm-hmm.
She said it just wasn't. It just isn't a random. I mean, you have to take a special road down there to this particular, spot.
You have to know it's there.
Right.
You have to know it's there. Yeah, and available.
Mm-hmm.
So, and her mother, I spoke to her too. They were very frightened that they thought Brad might come after them.
Yeah.
Because they had found, the forest ranger, because he had found the evidence of the bodies.
Right.
And her mother to this day swears that station wagon pulled into their driveway.
Oh, wow.
So I was supposed to go up there, but unfortunately, they have a lot of COVID cases up there right now.
Yeah.
So, they just really wanted, they just really want to be heard. And
just trying to help a little bit solve the case, I guess, too, right?
Yeah, or at least, their involvement in it some way to have it resolved.
Yeah.
If he would never set that fire, they would have never found him.
That's right. So why on earth would he do that?
I don't know.
I think, only because speaking as his daughter, I think he had a lot of theatricality about him. Not so much that he was an actor, but I think he took on a few different personas. Right. I think he enjoyed the fact that he pulled this off. And so maybe he just wanted to get a little more attention. Mm-hmm. Why would he leave that bottle, the prescription bottle of pills, in his car?
Exactly.
I feel like he was saying, look what I did. Because, I still don't know whether he was bitter about his job change, and the fact that he didn't get the promotion that he wanted to get.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he was bitter about that. And this was his way of getting back at the government. Of course, I've also heard from a couple of people. Of course, they're getting up there in age now. But I've heard from some people who knew him, a college roommate. I've talked to him and a friend of his who was a professor in Botswana when he was, living there, and they've contacted me, and a few of them have alluded to the fact that they were pretty convinced he was doing CIA work.
Yeah.
So who knows? There could be another story. There's a lot of conspiracy theories. I'll be honest, I'm not 100% convinced that the FBI is really following through on anything. Mm-hmm. I tend to think, I can be very forgiving about whatever happened in 1977. It was or 1976. It was a long time ago. And maybe there were some mistakes made, but the technology that we have now wasn't in existence then. I don't know. It's certainly a mystery, but I was sent a package of information from a guy who grew up right across the street from Brad. He said that Brad's mother, she seems like a saint, her name was Obelia, mm-hmm. That Brad's mother was a second mother to everybody in the neighborhood. And he said, all these years I've saved all kinds of things. And he says, I realized, now I'm 87 years old. I don't know what to do with it, so I'm going to send it to you. And looking through, I still haven't read all of it, but there's every newspaper article or copies of every newspaper article that was published around the murders, and then the subsequent, like every 10 years or so, it gets in the news again. But there's also handwritten letters from Lobelia.
Wow.
Written to his mother, and they contain a lot of information because apparently she visited them in Europe at several times, and she would talk about different things that Brad was doing at his job, and so there's a lot to go through there, but there might be some clues.
Could be.
Yeah. And he also told me that he was it was very sweet. He was concerned about my children and their sanity, and myself and my sanity. And I talk in the book about suffering from the exact same symptoms of anxiety and depression and insomnia that my father did at exactly the same age, which is weird. And of course, it's not the stigma now that it was. I mean, all teachers have insomnia, but
no, of course,
that it was in the 70s. But he said that Brad's father, that insanity ran in his family. He said, he says, your grandfather, Brad's father, killed himself. He said, you'll never see that in the news. It says he had a heart attack, but he had no heart issues.
Wow.
He said, we're pretty sure he killed himself. And he said he was a very odd person, and that Brad's grandmother for a period of time lived with them, and she would never wear her clothes. So she was always running naked through the house. So this poor man was worried that insanity was, being passed genetically.
Yeah.
I said, well, we're all kind of a little bit crazy here, but I think we're okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it's interesting. I just keep picking up little tidbits of information.
That's good too. People reaching out to you and trying to help. Now I know you get the weirdos and the crazies out there, but
right. That's why I don't answer the first time.
Yeah. But just a couple last questions. There's reported that Brad was seen in North Carolina with a dark-skinned woman.
That's right.
Do you believe there's any truth to that, or what's your thoughts on that?
Well, from what I've seen of him. In my research, well, first of all, if he had an affair with my birth mother that resulted in a child, and at the same time he was maintaining a long-distance relationship with his girlfriend in California, then that doesn't, that shows that his sense of ethics might not. And I know it only takes once, and we still don't know how they ever got together, but there were a lot of allusions to the fact that he was a womanizer. He had affairs, and so that doesn't surprise me. He loved living. Africa was one of his favorite places to live, and they had been there. The family had been there for a while, and who knows? Maybe he had somebody that he had met there who came to America. That doesn't surprise me at all. Not at all. So yeah, I don't know what happened to her. I don't know if she stayed with him. Yeah, that was pretty bold. He made some bold moves for the 1970s. I mean, first of all, just even admitting that he was suffering from depression and anxiety and seeking help, that isn't something your usual run-of-the-mill
No, it's not.
35-year-old man did in the 70s.
Especially working for the State Department.
There's also some theories that the government wanted him gone because he his character was an embarrassment to the U.S. government. I mean, how much they're really, how much credence that is, or I don't know. But I also got a call from a reporter he lives in LA now, but he had done an extensive report on the case, and he said that there are some recordings of phone calls that he made to some buddies out in California saying, I have really screwed up. I am in some big trouble. But how to listen to those, I don't know. I do honestly believe it would be really easy for him to get out of town. He would figure out a way. He was he was trained to.
Oh yeah, he's a very smart man.
To stay under the stay under the radar, and
that's what he did. Yeah.
Happen. Yeah.
Well, Kathy, tell us a little bit about your book and how our listeners can get a hold of it.
Oh yeah.
Fill us in.
It's called It's in My Genes. It's GENES. It's available on Amazon. It's available through Books a Million. It's available on Kindle. So it's pretty easy to get a hold of. It's as I said, it's not it's not the great American novel, but people have told me that it's got a pretty good rating. And it talks about it talks not so much about Brad Bishop as it talks about the whole process of DNA testing and nature versus nurture. Like, when you're raising children, you can, my parents, as I say, they'll always be my mom and dad, my adoptive parents. They were such great role models, and they raised me to respond in certain ways, but basically who I am is what's in my genes,
exactly.
Is what's in my DNA. And that fortunately I used, and that I think I have a lot of the same skills my father had. Fortunately, I used them in a positive way, and he probably used his in a positive way. But the more I looked at him, I think he could be a chameleon. So that's what it looks like. It talks about me as a kid and how I grew up and about my parents' background, and then it talks about my other set of parents' background. And then I just kind of put it together and say, well, okay, so, be careful what you look for is one warning that I tell people. The DNA tests are not a joke.
Yeah.
They're science doesn't lie. So if I had found out that information when I was 20, I'd probably be a very different person. Being older and wiser and pretty well established in my own identity, it was okay. I wasn't, because even the FBI agent, when she called me and she told me, that it was a match, she said, "Are you okay with this information?" She said, "You seem pretty well adjusted." I said, "Oh yeah." I said, "I'm okay. It's interesting, and I wish that I could help some people who were very badly hurt as a result of what he did. And of course, I'd love to solve the mystery.
Of course.
And maybe I, I'm about to sign a contract that a television documentary is going to get started, and the more the story gets out here, maybe we will get to solve it, and maybe some people will get their vindication. But it's a lot of people are very badly hurt.
Yep.
Obviously, and traumatized. Yeah.
Well, Kathy, I got one last question. Has the FBI told you anything that you can't tell anybody about Brad Bishop?
No. At first, when I actually knew in June that the FBI had confirmed it, and it was suggested that it be kept quiet for a while.
Okay.
And that was, and the reason was that they were expecting a media circus.
Yeah.
So just last week, a story came out in D.C. and because he interviewed the FBI, and they did announce it. And it hasn't been the media circus that came out when the first story came out. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Yeah. I would like to, the pandemic is really putting a cramp in all of this, because I would like to go up to Maryland and talk to some people and,
Well, maybe
and
it'll
see what I
happen.
can find out.
Maybe it'll happen pretty soon.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty wild just to do that DNA thing, looking for possible siblings, and then run into all this is just kind of overwhelming, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you've really been a trooper as far as tracking down every little piece of info you can get. It's a pretty great story.
Yeah. Well, my cousin does, as I say, she's the one that does she did all the research, because that's not my thing. I provided the saliva, and she did the research.
I think you said you just spit in a tube, right?
All I did was spit in a tube. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. And look what happens.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Kathy, we certainly appreciate you being on our little podcast.
Well, thank you. I appreciate being given the opportunity.
Yes.
Take care and have a great night.
All right, you too, Kathy.
You too. Thanks so much.
Good talking to you.
Uh-huh.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, Dale. That is our interview with Kathy Gilchrist.
Man, that was great.
I'll tell you, she's just super nice lady.
Yeah, can't thank her enough. That was just super. I loved
And
it.
more information that I could possibly wanted.
Yeah.
I mean, she answered all of our questions.
And then some.
Oh, yeah. Full of knowledge, and I hope that she finds answers to what she's looking for. And also, everybody check out her book. We'll put a link in the description in our show notes, and we'll post it on our social media. So everybody,
for sure.
Everybody can get a copy of her book.
Get a gander at it. It's in her jeans.
That's it. It's in her jeans. All right, Dale, we're going to get out of here.
All right, man. Let's roll.
We want everyone to be safe, be careful, and always be aware of your surroundings.
Because the next episode could be about you.
This is
The Crack House Chronicles.